Perfect. Wonderful. Well, it's so lovely to see so many familiar faces here and even the ones that are not. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. And we we have a topic, I think, which we've kind of long put off, but have finally managed to get it all together. And I think we're going to have a treat this evening with our panelists and hopefully with also the contribution of everyone present here this evening. So this meeting is being recorded, and you would have seen that, and it will be available on our website. Lynn, are there any other housekeeping rules that I may be missing, or can we just go ahead?
Just a very big welcome to everybody. Thank you.
Okay, wonderful. So the format of today, like we generally do with most of our learning forums, is really relaxed and quite informal, and really just looking for your engagement as well. The way we'll run the first part of this is to have our panelists introduce themselves, and we have some questions that we'll go through, which hopefully cover many questions that you may have as well. And we'll do that for just over an hour, and then we'll open it up for questions from you all to ask any or all of our panelists on the call. So maybe just to give some context of mindfulness in the corporate setting, to start, I think definitely the one thing that's happened over the last few years is it's really made the topic of well-being and mental health emerge as something very topical, especially in the corporate setting. And corporates themselves have been looking for various ways and interventions to help their employees and themselves. And while the context of well-being within the corporate setting is a very complex, multidimensional one that I am particularly passionate about as well, and really looking at the systemic causes of mental issues, burnout, stress, etc. in corporate. Definitely, many of our corporates are looking at how can we help our employees in the short term, and what are the interventions that can be used. Many things like yoga, mindfulness, etc., have come into play. Things like coaching, providing support to employees, as well as, of course, other ancillary kind of tools and support structures for them. So in light of this, the highly topical nature of mindfulness in the corporate setting, we thought it would be of value to our community and our members to be able to have a conversation about this topic. And to that end, we have been able to get together a very esteemed group of panelists, and I'm very happy to say, and very excited to engage with them on this topic. So Casper Oelofson, Linda Kantor, and Liza Stead, thank you so much once again for agreeing to this. And I know it's a busy time of the year as well, so we're really excited about this. And maybe just to start, I'm always wondering what's the most acceptable way of intros, but I think in order to not kind of do any injustice to any one of you, I'm going to give you the floor and to please give a short introduction of yourself and your kind of history, and then we'll launch into our questions. So whoever would like to start, please go ahead. Liza, where are you? Let's see. Oh, here you are. Okay, Liza, I'm going to go with you because you're on the far left corner of my screen.
Pick someone. Good evening, everyone, and thank you for the opportunity. So, for 14 years, I ran the coaching, mentoring, and mindfulness center at RMB. It extended to the First Rand Group. It started as coaching and mentoring, and in around 2017, the mindfulness component came into being. And as part of the global leadership and coaching offering with a strong partnership with our wellbeing team. And I also then left RMB in April this year. I'm the general manager and leadership coach for Coach Matching. And so now offering mindfulness masterclasses. And I've also curated an urban oasis, which is essentially a mindfulness space where offering the MBSR and retreat facilitator. My big dream is to have leaders and their teams come and spend time in a mini retreat as they step away from the hustle and bustle of corporate life and come and be together in a different way with their teams. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Liza. Casper?
So my name is Casper, and I've been involved in mindfulness for about more than 20 years. I was a founder of a bank where we tried to take the complexity of banking and make it simple. Simplicity was what attracted me in business way back, and then I stumbled upon mindfulness on a warrior monk course where I just sat, and simplicity was to keep quiet and pretend like you are meditating and you're in the moment. And that was an incredible experience then of the complexity and the noise and simplicity for me. So I then studied further, and I really try and work with my clients and try and increase the quality thinking of leaders in an environment where we don't know what to do, where it's complex and it's tough. So yeah, I tend to work mostly in corporates, but Ashika, I've realized that I'm actually just a cheat because I do a lot of mindfulness and coaching sessions. I force myself into mindfulness every day because to practice is just too difficult. I don't get to it. So now I try and get my clients pay for me to practice with them. So I think it's quite effective. I don't have a choice whether I want to practice every day. So that's my background. I'm still fascinated, and I think I'm a rookie with it, but I'm learning. Thank you.
Wonderful. Anything to get us practicing. So I'm glad it works for you. Linda?
Thanks, Ashika. Thanks, Casper, for that. What a good way to get into the practice. Yeah, so I guess having brought the first 8-week program to South Africa a long time ago, I can't even think how many years ago. I think after a few years of teaching, it really started to feel, this could be applied in other situations, and particularly with leadership and corporate. And so it was kind of like a dream that could happen. And slowly but surely, I started to get asked to teach in different scenarios. I think one of the first corporate spaces I taught in was for a petrochemical company that had staff members that really needed to pay attention, because you take your eye off the ball for 1 second and you're going to have a safety problem. So they had kind of clicked onto the importance of EQ and attention. So yeah, I used to kind of fly off early in the morning and spend 2 days with teams of this mix of managers and blue collar workers, which was really quite challenging and intriguing. And over the last 14 years or so, I've been teaching at the Graduate School of Business. So I teach on a 2-year Exec MBA program where mindfulness is actually a compulsory part of the program. So I get the joy of really weaving it into a business program, and I teach other smaller pieces for the business school. So a lot of my corporate work has actually or organizational work has ended up being expressed in that space specifically, but I've had the odd other corporates coming along, and so it's been a very varied experience, and I'm learning all the time, I would say. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Linda. So before we start with our questions, let me just give some introduction or some background about myself. So I'm a medical doctor by training. I've spent 10 years in corporate myself, and left when I became a very busy mom of 3 little boys, and found myself somehow in an MBA program. I really don't know how I did that and why at the time, and really got to a place of, I think, personal burnout, and explored different ways of looking at my own well-being. So found myself in integrative and functional medicine, and through that met Simon for the first time, and studied coaching through an integral school based in Cape Town as well. And then in my own personal journey, really explored mindfulness and meditation before I started looking at it as the source of well-being and actually the source of leadership in many ways. So I currently work as a well-being and a leadership and an executive coach with various different schools and different coaching organizations, and also run some of my own programs in corporate. So that's a bit of my background. So with that, I think we've kind of all looked at how we all got started in this corporate space. Maybe just to put the question out there, what has your experience been in this corporate space, and how has it perhaps evolved over the years? Casper, you look like you're reaching for your keyboard.
I think it's a difficult answer, Ashika, because the mindfulness world in a corporate space 10, 15 years ago, it's very different than the last 2 years. It feels like something else happened over the COVID period. Even 6, 7 years ago, I had to explain to clients why I think it's important to have a mindfulness-based intervention. And now it's more a space of people coming and asking for it, not always knowing what it is and what they will get. So it's I've struggled to find one answer for it. I think it's really evolving and changing as we speak. And also the topic tonight, mindfulness at work or mindfulness in the corporate environment, we have found that with the hybrid model, our clients are not working from home, they are living at work. So it's almost back to just mindfulness. It's not like it's mindfulness in life. Whatever the training or the intervention is, it's not in just a work category anymore. That's my experience. It's really changed and evolved. Yeah, I hope I've answered that more or less.
Great. And I think you speak so poignantly about how the last 2 years have almost created this meteoric shift in the conversation on well-being in the workplace, and I totally agree with you. Around the whole concept of it shouldn't be at work or at home, because we're all whole, we're all one. And creating these silos, I think, is part of the challenge that we have. So yeah, and maybe just to offer that question to Liza and Linda, how have you found your offering, or your the way in which you work with corporates shifting and evolving over the last couple of years?
Yeah, I think very similar to Casper. So the inception of the mindfulness offering in the R&B world was through leadership programs. So probably quite similar to what Linda offers at the business school. It was part of the curriculum, and actually quite well received, but it was kind of isolated to a particular context, and whether or not people continued beyond that couldn't always be sure. But it was in curating a particular space, having a mindfulness space where staff could step away in the middle of a busy day and come for some silence, some respite, or a guided session at different times. That started to pick up, and it became more inclusive. So it was beyond just leaders and participants on a particular program. It was actually on campus, whoever wanted to participate. But it was the COVID experience. I will never forget the 3 weeks as we kicked off. In fact, Casper was at my house recording some pieces that would help to just hold space for our staff. And so now it was not a particular demographic, it was everybody in the organization. And we pivoted to online, and we held space 3 times a day, at 8 in the morning, 1 at lunchtime, and 4 in the afternoon. And that was not for leaders, that was for families. And we had Nicola Aylward come and do some recordings of how you could support your children with breathing exercises. And it was beautiful. I've got photographs of families of children on the other side of the screen. And so we offered this, because it was just accessible, and that's continued. So I think that it's then shifted from the leadership supportive space, where it was for high performance and resilience. It became more of, can we just keep our everything together? So it became very much into the neuroscience of mindfulness, the well-being, and that just didn't go away. I think that fundamentally shifted the offering. Yeah.
Mm. Yeah, and I think that's, just looking at that, it's really about the responding and the feeling into the need, and how actually I think it really speaks to the psyche and the mindset shift around what we really need and want in order to really have true well-being. But what a beautiful story about the kids and entire families, and that must have been really special as well. And Linda, how have you found your own kind of work evolving over the recent, and maybe even in the long term?
Yeah, I think it'll be, I want to just reflect on the long term. The shifts that have happened in the last few years are enormous, because when I started teaching at the business school 15 years ago, whenever it was, I had such kickback when I started to teach. I think I got the harshest criticism I'd ever received in my entire life. And I'd gone in there, like, oh, everybody should benefit from these practices. It will be lovely. And actually, people really struggled with it. And I guess part of it is there's been an evolution in my own teaching and my own understanding of how to place this in the corporate context, and what people in organizations really need, as opposed to somebody coming to do an MBSR. So part of the shift has been that I think part of the shift has also been just this increased complexity and, you know, the trauma of COVID and post-COVID and people grappling more. And so I love that you've named, Liza, this, you know, this shift from this idea that it's about high performance really to something that's much more front and center around how are we with ourselves and with each other and with the greater world around us. So that certainly has been a lot of my thinking and reflecting in the last few years, is, you know, how to shift it out of just a, you know, the stress management thing and the well-being thing into something broader, given the, you know, the complexities we're in, given what's happening on the planet, given the incredible roles that leaders have and corporates have in solving and being part of the creative solving of all of these problems. So I think, yeah, so a lot of my shifting in teaching has also been around the shifting context. And I also think, like the others, I've had to learn how to teach online a lot more. You know, at the business school now, we have a hybrid model. So I've had to learn how to teach large classes with, you know, half of them at home and half of them online. And, you know, that in itself is a mindfulness practice. And I see that I feel like a lot of corporates have been wanting that, especially during COVID. There was a lot of corporate online teaching. So how to do that and how to frame that has also been part of the recent growth for me. Yeah.
So perhaps we've named some of this already, but perhaps to make it just a little bit more explicit in terms of the kind of, if there is such a thing, the big buckets or the big themes of some of the challenges that people may face in taking a mindfulness approach, whether it's a real approach, whether it's a program, whether it's through coaching or, you know, one-on-one groups, etc. What have you experienced as kind of the big themes and challenges in working in this space in particular? Linda, you unmuted, so.
Yeah, I guess, I mean, I think there's lots of challenges depending on where one is teaching. But I think often I have found corporates wanting mindfulness to be some kind of magic bullet, you know, like just do these practices and all the, you know, everybody will be feeling much better. And I think that's run the risk of much deeper systemic issues, you know, it being used as some kind of paintbrush to kind of disguise the other systemic issues that might be in a particular organization. So that certainly has been, you know, one challenge is in how to explain that when I'm kind of getting buy-in from people. So yeah, and I think being real about the practices, you know, these practices, if they're done in a particular way with commitment, can surface some of the more difficult stuff. So again, this idea that mindfulness is all about being calm and peaceful and wise, but actually, you know, given the levels of trauma that are in our society, sometimes that's not what people are navigating when they start to engage with these practices. So again, ensuring how to ensure safety in particular organizations or particular contexts, how to make sure that people's difficult emotions are held and supported, because they might get activated and often do get activated in the practices. Yeah, so those are some of there's much more in terms of what happens in organizations. For example, if an organization comes and they want it to be compulsory for everybody, And then there's a kind of in-group or an out, or it's not compulsory. And then there's a kind of in-group and an out-group, people who are doing the practices and who've done a mindfulness program, and those people who haven't. So I think there's other interesting layers to the conversation and other interesting challenges to bringing it into corporate spaces. And yeah, I think it needs to be really well held, and that's not always possible in that, you know, I think corporates often want you to come in, do an intervention, and everything's going to be not messy and much better. And it's not always the case. Yeah.
Liza and Casper, would you like to add anything?
I think I'll add. Yeah, what I really found interesting in the last 2 or 3 years, some companies who realized there's just too many Teams meetings and people were over meetings. They were just, it's on the hour and it starts at 7 and it ends at 7. And some clients now, they have 2 different meetings because you can now have 2 screens and you can record the one meeting, which you can watch in the evening. And some companies came out with, okay, how about meeting-free Wednesdays or meeting-free Fridays? And it was interesting to see what happened. I think almost all of those clients of mine are back. No, rather give us the meeting Wednesdays and the meeting Fridays, because the moment we all don't have meetings, then we have to kind of think, and we have to be with our own thoughts, and we have to be with our children's problems and with load shedding in South Africa and to big meta issues in the world. And it was interesting for me how many clients just wanted to go back to the meetings. Although the meetings are draining, the meetings can lead to burnout. Just don't leave us on our own with our thoughts on the day. And I can so associate with that, and so much compassion with that. It's also difficult. It's difficult for me, and many of my clients would ask or use mindfulness as a tool to deal with the complexities in the world. And then after session 3, Linda and Liza, people realize, but the inner complexities is much more than, oh, shit, Casper, I thought you're going to help us solve those. And now I realize that, gosh, the complexities within is, I mean, it's world can't even match it. So now I have a problem. But now I have to deal with 2 different complexities. And I mean, I always remember a moment for me in Johannesburg was on a highway where it was about 12 years ago, there was a sign that said, you don't sit in traffic, you are traffic. And I wasn't happy with this signage. But later on, I realized it's maybe true. You know, you don't sit in traffic, you are traffic. And a lot of my clients then realized that I'm not confronted by complexity, I am complexity. And we find in our experience, some clients then want to deepen it, and other clients say, no, thanks, I'm out. I've got enough complexities to deal with. This is not giving us what we wanted it to give. So it was an exciting first 3 or 4 engagements, but we'll come back later. That's the challenges I have is mindfulness needs you to stop, pause, to slow down, and the world of work is not catering for that.
Yeah, I'll come. I'll come from a slightly different angle because of being inside of an organizational system. I was responsible for the mindfulness facilitation team, and so ensuring that they were trained in relevant modalities, and that they had the skill, the embodiment of the practice to hold space and guide, whether it was in the physical space or the online space. And I think one of the challenges was to ensure, I felt this very strong responsibility for ensuring that the offering didn't become esoteric and woo-woo, because it could very easily have gone that way. And it was about grounding it in neuroscience, the practices being relevant in everyday life. And so it was like this fine balance without wanting to dilute it, that it loses the rich essence of mindfulness, meditation, presencing, all of this, but also making sure that we held something that was going to be relevant and acceptable in the corporate. And it might seem like a strange thing, but I did have to have some challenging conversations with the facilitator or two about, can we just think about, what would be acceptable? And it feels a little controlling, but I think it was about ensuring that this was, can I even say palatable for most people rather than off-putting? And that sounds like a strange thing to say, but yeah, that was a big thing.
Yeah, I think it's so interesting how each of your experiences have been so diverse, and they bring such a different richness to this conversation about the complexity of mindfulness in this particular setting. And I was kind of like looking at as you were speaking, the elements of real deep care for the human being. That's what you were saying, Linda. And the other aspect of leadership, and what does this mean in the context of mindfulness in the organization? Are we actually ready for what it has to offer? That it's not the magic bullet, and that the essence and the culture of an organization needs to change. When Casper was speaking about the meeting-free days also being like me in my face kind of thing, and I'm unable to look there. And what you're saying, Liza, is really about the meeting people where they're at, while keeping the richness and the authenticity of the practice. So where do we find that middle ground in mindfulness in this particular setting? So perhaps to go to a question that when we had our little half an hour huddle the other day, one of those that was quite controversial, I think, but nevertheless, I think a very rich question to talk about the polarity that mindfulness kind of brings in this context is success. What even is that word? Is there such a thing? And how might you have vaguely defined success in this context? So yeah, I'm going to leave it to you.
I'll start with my statement, and I'll leave Liza and Linda to cover for it. But it was funny when we had that conversation, because I said, well, it's very difficult to know the successes of mindfulness, apart from the fact that at a fast-moving retail client where 6 of the 15 executives resigned after 6 months, that's my success story of mindfulness. Because if you really, really pause and you really, really look into yourself in a capitalist environment, then so it depends where success is defined from. Please, Linda, please, Liza, help. It's not necessarily the only success, but it's tough. It's tough because if mindfulness is really, really successful and we all really look inwards, and it's likely that you will resign in the corporate environment. It's possible.
Yeah, it's still making me smile, Casper, because we did have a good laugh about it. And it is really difficult, because it depends on where are you coming from? Because for me, I have a particular idea of what success is. If I'm teaching a corporate group, or I'm teaching at the business school, I've got, for me, success is, can I help leaders kind of travel this journey? And I say it to them from their head to their heart. And I often frame it for them like, this might be one of the hardest journeys you ever have in your life. So I have to frame it in a particular way where they might get excited and engaged with oh, this could be a difficult journey. So I think there's you know, and that for me, getting people to be able to slow down, to be able to meet themselves, to be able to know what it means to come from the place of the heart, with more compassion for self and other, that for me is more success. But if somebody's approaching me to do a corporate mindfulness something, their idea of success might be very different to that. And so how to kind of hold that paradox and meet it with a degree of integrity for what I believe that, you know, for me, the practice has a particular meaning when I bring it to leadership. And I think for other people, they might feel quite fine to bring it into leadership and, you know, for it to be about the bottom line. So I really do think it depends on our own journey with the practice as well, and what sense making we've made of it along the way. I'm smiling because you know, when I was at some point when I was teaching at the business school, I really started to question, like, what are people getting out of this? You know, like, are they getting anything? Like, is this actually useful for them, or, you know, dangerous for them, or what's actually happening? So that resulted in me deciding to do a PhD on it and actually being able to interview people on what was happening. And I remember one guy that I interviewed, and he said, you know, I'm so relaxed and calm now, but I have to pretend that I'm not. Like, I have to walk around looking like if people ask me how I am, I have to say, like, I'm so busy, like, I'm so stressed. It's not really what I'm feeling. But if I walked around saying, I'm so relaxed and chilled, and everything feels, you know, great and under control, you know, I think I might be penalized in some kind of way. So what was really interesting when I did the research was just finding the amount of paradox that was there. You know, whereas people had come to do the practices hoping to be more productive, but their understandings of productivity actually shifted. So for them, the idea of productivity became like, well, I get to spend more time with my family and I slow down more, or maybe I have a smaller car, but I actually can work less. So the idea of what success and productivity really shifted, and I think that was interesting for me to see, and it highlighted for me the number of paradoxes there are in bringing this work to organizations and to the world of work in a way. Yeah, so I'll pause there. But
Wow, so interesting. And I think what we're definitely seeing is, you know, this kind of polarity and these paradoxes that is involved in this complex setting. Liza?
Yeah, look, in a corporate setting, it's all around budgets and how many people are attending, and is it going to be worth it, and are we using internal facilitators, teachers, external, all of these things. I think what stands out for me, and maybe it's more highlights than success, you know, how do we measure success? So you can track the numbers, and we would report on that in the human capital month end and quarterly and annual reports. And we'll never, ever achieve the same numbers of attendance as we did during the peak of the pandemic. I mean, there was in thousands, whereas, you know, you're down to a couple of hundred now. But that always fascinated me. Why would that be important? Because the facilitators would show up. If there was one person there, they would guide a session for one person, and that was enough. So that's another paradox. Who does it for what intention? And yeah, I think also what worked really well in a corporate setting is bringing in particular organizational themes and holding space around that. So maybe putting together a curated program for like a 21-day journey. That was a big lockdown, 21 days of lockdown that was extended to 35 days. And then, you know, where there was grief and loss. And so using, you know, working with facilitators who could very skillfully and heartfully hold space for those who are struggling with that, or people who were in isolation, had COVID and they were locked down alone. That there's a theme I know at the moment that's being curated around return to work. So this is a big thing where people have sort of reshaped their lives, and now they've been asked to come back to the office for 4 days a week. And for many, that is like, it's almost not doable. So there will be the resignations that for different reasons than what, to what Casper meant. Whereas people are saying, I actually like my life the way it is now, and I don't wish to reconstruct it back to whatever that was before. And so they're making different choices. But it gives space for people to use the practices and make it relevant to what is happening right now as it is happening. And I think that that's very powerful.
I think, Ashika, if I can just add to that, I've also noticed that with the hybrid model that most corporates are challenged with, some of them are also suddenly understanding the power of mindfulness. One executive said to me, "Oh my goodness, that we always thought that people's minds are where they sit. So you must come to office because if you're at the office, you're there." No, we our minds don't work like that. In fact, if you want somebody to be at the office, maybe keep them at home or somewhere else. Then their mind might go to the office. So there's that belief that we had is where somebody sits, that's where their mind is. So suddenly for some of these executives, this hybrid model is a totally new challenge, because we always thinking almost like the industrial age. We think where the corpse or the body is the intellect and the work. Well, that's not true. It's true maybe in a factory that manufactures high, intense, heavy material, but not in a thinking world. So that's an interesting debate. And I think for many of my executives, the penny is dropping. Oh, we can't control our minds. Our minds we paid to control our minds, but we can't. So I love the fact that there's meta questions that's coming up about where is the mind.
Powerful. And in my own personal experience, I use I predominantly coach one-on-one, and what I find is there's a very, for me, clear the clear importance of timing in when coaching one-on-one in terms of, it's interesting because a lot of clients actually choose me because of the work that I've done in mindfulness. And yet when we start with the coaching, it's almost like there's a bit of a back away, from doing the practices themselves. And it takes a good few sessions before we're able to really get into the practices themselves and work with that, from a very tangible perspective. So what I find is meeting people where they're at is the biggest lesson, or the biggest way I can say, in whatever way success, I could see people benefiting from it. And I think the second thing for me is really to hold the space for them and the care and the safety. And I think that's often what people are looking for, maybe without clearly articulating it. So it's interesting, Linda, you were mentioning, are people getting anything out of it? And we wonder about this. And we've been talking for quite a while now about, the corporate side and our clients and the work that we've been doing. But maybe let's just flip some of the questions around to us. And as practitioners working in the space, what keeps you doing the work that you're doing? And how fulfilling are you finding this work? I'm smiling because Linda's smiling, and that means something interesting.
Yeah, thanks, Ashika. I guess there's a lot to say on that too. For me, it's been, such a huge personal journey from the time of teaching at the business school and getting that, really terrible feedback, which is kind of anonymous feedback from students around, these practices and me. And it's really interesting because something in me persisted despite that. So, whereas a lot of my friends were like, well, you don't have to do this, just like, don't do it anymore. But there was just, it's making me, the question's making me reflect on what was it that kept me going. And I think there's something about really perceiving this deep thirst that I guess a lot of the people that I've taught weren't aware of when they started, but this deep thirst to slow down and to be in their lives in a different way. And I guess a belief for me that if more of us did that, especially in the corporate world, we might be working with our planet and with what's happening in the complexities of the world in a different, wiser way. So I think that the fulfilling part is that that call, that deeper call. And even if one person in the beginning got it, that was deeply fulfilling. So, just so it doesn't sound bad, but, I like to tell that story. But actually, during that time, there were also a lot of students who started to see the value and started to bring it into their own organizations in small ways, whether it was just before they started a meeting, they would ask everybody how they were, how are you? And just get a 1 or 2 word check-in. Or they would just start a meeting with silence for a minute, and some of them brought bells, and so I started to hear some of these stories that those people that were catching on started to use it in really interesting ways, and those stories really were fulfilling. They started to answer that kind of heart call of, oh, okay, this could spread in really interesting and unusual and creative ways, because it's really clear and became really clear to me that the full MBSR is not what was going to be useful in these spaces, but really giving people touch points was and small practices that could be very helpful to them. So I think that's been the fulfilling for me, is seeing those movements and seeing that growth and meeting that deeper call inside of me, which hasn't been easy. I guess there are times where I'm like, what? But there's a it's very, very fulfilling when you see people actually engaging. Yeah, and asking questions like Casper's, asking what is the mind, and recognizing these aspects. Yeah.
Yeah, I so relate to what Linda says about a calling, because I now can't imagine my life without mindfulness being a part of my life, and that doesn't mean that it comes easy, but it just exists in my day-to-day life. And I think there's just this urge to enable others to have that experience too, to know how it can make such a fundamental difference. And if I think about the number of hours that people spend in the workspace with colleagues, and how different it can be. I mean, I was just reading Alex's questions, and we can come to that in the chat, about micro practices. And I think that for me was the challenge, was to find ways that allowed it to be accessible in everyday life. So it's not about sitting for half an hour or going on a 1 week silent retreat. It's how do you infuse that experience in smaller opportunities. So a 3-step breathing space, for example, absolutely a leader who knows to start a meeting with a minute of silence or a 3-step breathing space practice can fundamentally change the quality of the conversation in that meeting or workshop or whatever. Or, you know, I know that Casper talks about when you have that cup of coffee, have that cup of coffee. And there's very much a cappuccino culture on campus. So go walk downstairs, take the stairs instead of the lift, get your cappuccino and have that cappuccino. And maybe you're going to greet somebody along the way and pause and really just be with that person. Ask them how they are and really listen and notice how they are responding to you. So just little things like that, practical ways. So I definitely also heard how people said that this had made such a difference to their lives. And so that just brings joy over and over and over again. It does make a difference. And I've also had people say, well, I just don't get this. I've tried it and I don't get it. And I love that too is not about our performance. It's just, you know, they're led or it doesn't make sense, and that's okay. There's no need for it to be a particular way, but you provide the opportunity.
Yeah, I just want to add to that, Liza, that, you know, that when I started to teach at the business school and I, you know, got this feedback, the head of the program, I went to him and I said, do you want me to actually carry on teaching? And he actually said, yes, I want to increase your hours. And I was like, and he said to me something that I'll never forget. He said, you are sowing the seeds for them now. And it's really interesting because sometimes, like years later, I get people coming up to me and they're like, you know, I was in your class and now I'm getting it. Now, something happened to me last year and I went through some kind of crisis or whatever, and I didn't get those practices then when you were teaching me, but now I understand what you were saying. So, you know, he was absolutely right that what was happening, even though there was resistance or they weren't getting it, is that little seeds were being dropped. And I guess not for everybody, but, you know, it's really been helpful for me to think about it in that way along the way.
Ashika, for me, it's, you know, the question is, you know, how fulfilling this is. I notice on my list, it's how many of my reasons why do this is kind of selfish. I think the first one is, as I said earlier, it forces me into practice. And I don't think I would have done all the practice I do if it's not with my clients sitting. So that's definitely, and practice works for me. And it does, I think it does help me deal or live in this world in a different way. And also it also reminds me never to go back to the corporate. It's a kind of almost a thank you for reminding me not to go back to where you are kind of thing. Not that I share that with my clients, but and I know I have a creative mind. I like to be creative, and I find mindfulness is such a beautiful, basic, simple thing, and I like to be creative with it. I find it very stimulating to come up with creative ideas, almost that the client shouldn't know that they've done mindfulness practices. It's almost like, yes, there is the formal practices, but in a corporate environment, how can one just bring in presencing practices that they don't even know they are doing? So that's my creative mind. And I've always been fascinated by ecosystems. Where I studied economics, and economics it means housekeeping. That's what economics means. And for me, I'm interested in the housekeeping of my mind. You know, how can I kind of housekeep my mind? Because if I do some housekeeping, I've got more space for other things. And the same with my clients. I've sometimes explained to them they're in the business of economics. This is a form of housekeeping. And if we do this housekeeping, it's much nicer to live in that house. And sometimes this house is going to be chaotic, but, you know, at the end of the day, the beginning of the day, it helps if there's some housekeeping done. And I suppose biggest return for me is personally is my relationship with my daughter. I think it's changed since I worked with mindfulness. Definitely with my dog, definitely with, I see stuff in my garden I've never seen. And clients come back and interesting how often they say the impact has been at home. It's been at home. The benefits that they hear is the daughter of this or the son or someone says, Dad, you say hello slightly different. So that's where I think, I hope I have an impact on the world. But it's mostly a reminder for me to do my own practice, which is quite difficult at times. So I think it's difficult to own just that what's fulfilling by not owning the benefits I get.
What beautiful answers and experiences I think each of you have brought. And I just want to echo some of the themes that you've mentioned. I think for me as well, it's definitely about sowing those seeds. And I always think of, a stone falling into a pond and creating that ripple. And I find that the easiest, probably, what's the word I'm looking for? Stealthy way of working with clients is actually bringing home the impact on our children. And the minute you say that, you can see people, already start to listen deeper, because our children we've never lived in the age that they are living in. And the pace of change and the impact of technology on them, and the lack of clear boundaries around how they use that in a healthy way. So what I find is, oftentimes in coaching a person, you're coaching the whole being, and if they're parents, you have a much easier why in introducing the practices to them. So lovely, and what beautiful heart-opening experiences each of you have had in your different ways. So maybe time for one other question before we open to our friends on the call for their questions to you. What do you think are some of the unmet needs? What is there still to kind of fill here? What might be missing that maybe we don't have the answer to yet, but really just what are the gaps and needs out there that we may be able to still work on, either to talk about, if not work on some type of solution.
I'm thinking about an earlier comment about the busyness. Somebody saying, I think it was Linda's participant who said, I don't know how to answer because I'm supposed to say how busy I am. And I think there is this paradigm about you've always got to be busy, and that it's almost poo-pooed to be able to take some slow time, to be able to retreat a little. And by that I'm back to, it's not a week away in silence. It can be an hour, it can be an afternoon, but even with the team, to actually stop sort of elevating the busyness and the high performance. And yes, I know people are thinking about it differently, but it's just a pause, and then things don't shift. But to really understand the power of that it's in that you can be more. And I think that there's a magic around that. It's like what you do in your private life, you can do in your private life, but it's even more powerful if you bring that to the many endless hours that you spend in the workspace.
So it's almost, really bringing the space and the pausing and the slowing down almost, and kind of in a way, I'm not sure if that would ever be normalized, but it's definitely bring some acceptance to some degree to that, and that it's in that pausing that productivity could be redefined. And it's not about quantity, it's probably about the quality of the presence that you bring to the work that you do.
It's such a difficult answer, or Ashika. For me, unmet need would be, I think, for people to first understand that they are not separated from, that work is not separated from life, and well-being is not a function at HR. I think it's, we still, and ourselves still live in a separate world. I go to another place on holiday, and I go to work, and I go to a place to socialize, and I think it's an unmet need is to understand that these things are not separated. I mean, we're not separated. It's still treating a mindfulness presence or being present as a tool in a certain environment to get a certain outcome. For me, the unmet need is still to find a way for people to understand this is not, it's not an extra or something. This is a way of being. And I'm not sure, I'm struggling to sell that to myself, never mind to clients. But for me, that's an unmet need. It's still being treated as something separate.
I hear you. It's not a tool or a technique. It's a fundamental shift in how you show up in the world. Yeah. Linda, you want to add anything?
Yeah, I think I really want to echo what Liza's saying. For me, I am seeing so much fatigue and burnout and tiredness in people in workspaces, because there's so much that people are having to digest, and they are on 24/7. There is no shutting down to the workday. So there is actually no separation. And I'm finding, people, even myself, glued to their phones way past when, like, we know all the stuff about rest and circadian rhythms and all of the stuff, but it's, there's this hunger for more information, and we're being fed it all the time as well. So I think, it's an unmet need to really help people value themselves enough to slow down and to rest. So I've become very interested in rest in addition to meditation as a different kind of practice. And I think there are unmet needs in the corporate space around the way mindfulness has been brought in as a stress reduction tool. I think it can miss the value of other aspects, like really deeply listening to each other, really being able to hold the polarities of disparate voices in different contexts, and having enough capacity to sit with that uncomfortableness of disparate and different voices. I think that those needs for me are becoming much more heightened. How to help, I guess, this yogic principle of ahimsa, non-harming, how to encourage a non-harming of self that then translates to a non-harming of each other, and then a broader picture of a non-harming of the environment that we're actually in. So for me, it's like those deeper principles that are in these practices, certainly in the yoga practice for me, and how to really be in integrity with what these practices are, and how to honor that, given that we still live in a world that, especially now that we're post-COVID and things seem to be speeding up and everybody seems to be heading into similar patterns, even though there is more of a hybrid approach. But I do see like a lot of these old patterns coming back. So how do you encourage us to stay with the learnings from COVID and the slowing down? So those for me are some of the unmet needs.
Yeah, I just want to maybe say one or two things around what you mentioned. For me, one of the low-hanging fruit is really using communication as a way of bringing mindful attention. And there was a client once when I just simply introduced the insight dialogue kind of process, and just simply saying the first two words, which was pause and relax. You can just see the shift in the kind of energy of this person. So for me, I think the unmet need and the low-hanging fruit is actually in how we speak to each other, because we miss so much because our minds are going so fast. And it would change fundamentally, I think, the discussions that happen, in a leadership context, in excos, in meetings, one-on-ones, all of it. And I think the online platform has definitely made that challenging. And yet there's opportunities even in the online platform, because I definitely do quite a bit of online coaching as well. And it's shifted how I coach online. And there's a beautiful book that I actually read recently. It's called Say What You Mean by Oren J. Sofer. And it really brings the heart of, kind of mindful communication into the space. And it's wonderfully written as well. So, yeah, I think I would love to bring all our other beautiful voices into this conversation. So please, everyone that's on the call, we'd love to hear your voice. You have a captive audience or captive set of panelists with great experience, and here's your opportunity to ask them any questions that you'd like. If you can unmute yourself and please pose your question to whomever you'd like to.
I think Louise has her hand up.
Louise, go ahead.
Hi. I just wanted to know from the panel, when you're in a corporate environment, you might get a group of people that their boss has said you're going to this course, but they might be a little reluctant. And also the dynamic of, if it's all from one company, that a lot of the people then know each other, and how does that change the dynamics of the group?
Who would like to answer that?
I'll try and answer part of that, Louise. I think it's such an important point. I mean, having this group have just been told they have to do this mindfulness thing. So normally our approach, or my approach, it is something that with consultation with a leader in HR, we would position a dilemma or a problem to be solved. And part of the problem that they want to solve, let it be burnout, or they're struggling with decision making in a complex environment, whatever that problem is, if mindfulness doesn't sit comfortably and fit that comfortably, it would be very difficult to just start mindfulness with everyone. So we normally position a solution, and one part of the solution is, or one stage of it would be a practice in mindfulness, and it might go through the whole intervention where we deal with whatever the complex issue is. So it's a thread that goes through, or it's one or two once-off interventions, but it has to make sense, business sense, to the team or the group. Otherwise, I find it very, very difficult, because you get 2 or 3 people who love the idea and others just think it's a waste of time. So from my side, I try and convince the team, where they almost ask, oh, great, they would love to do this. It can't just come from the leader.
And the dynamics in the group of knowing each other?
I was hoping that Linda or Lisa would answer, but I think that's a reality that's there. So normally we bring in what we call just enabling constraints, and we say this is a personal process. Please go as deep as you would like, and respect the container. Use your common sense, and for mindfulness people to practice, they need to have some psychological safety. It was easier to do it on a virtual platform. That was the part that was easier on a virtual platform. But sometimes in a group or in a boardroom where we sit together, some with their eyes closed, that's quite an edge for some people in the corporate environment, a significant edge that one has to. And again, we try and have a conversation about it, and we kind of nudge people into using common sense on what they want to share, how they want to share it. It is, after all, not a mindfulness retreat. But in general, we find people are quite good with that. The mindfulness practice itself brings in tranquility and ease, gives them a way of managing boundaries and knowing what they want. So it's almost it works with itself once you've started. I don't know, Linda, Lisa, maybe you have more details
I think
on that.
it's not too dissimilar from any other group in a way that you're forming and contracting and providing the container. I think the mindfulness practices themselves will be able to speak to that. Nobody has to share, nobody has to take it on. It's all a choice. I think it's the holding of all of that, whether it is somebody told to go or somebody chosen to go. They're working with that, why are they here? Do they want to be here? I think it's the skill of the facilitator to bring that forward and allow the personal exploration for the individual.
Yeah, I think those are beautiful answers from both Casper and Liza, and I can only just echo the value of really making everything invitational, so that even if people feel like they're there and it's compulsory or whatever the organization has told them to come, that when they're in that space, making the space really compassionate, really non-judgmental, and safe, for them to explore in whatever way is okay. So I've learned along the way to be very fluid around that. And so for some people, being safe might still be, first of all, I might offer them that they could do any practice in their own mind, that they might have their own prayer practice or some other practice that they feel more comfortable with, and that they could use the space to do that. Or they can use the space just to be interested and curious and to question with me, and to have the conversation about what they're noticing or what their edge is. So I guess there's no magic answer to this, except for just doing one's best to facilitate, to contract the safety in the beginning, to make sure that people know what it is from the offset. So to really make sure that people are informed as best you can. That's not always possible depending on the brief that I've had. But especially letting management, the kind of HR know what this is and what might unfold. I've found that quite important to be transparent around the practices and what they entail and what they're about, but also giving people lots of flexibility and fluidity within the sessions to explore in a way that is meaningful and right for them. And sometimes that's been challenging, because I've run, walking meditation in gardens where some people have, their walking meditation has been having a cigarette on the side, and that's been what they've done. And, just bringing curiosity to that would be the invitation. So, yeah. And I guess, it's again very difficult when they're different members of a team and a boss all in the same group, because again, safety will be compromised or impacted in one way or another. So bringing awareness to that even before the intervention has happened, I think is useful. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Louise, for your question. Amina, you have your hand up. You can unmute yourself and ask.
Yes, yeah, thank you so much. I've had a lot that I had to note down. So I have like a question that has, it's two in one, in the sense that my first question was going to be, is there like a tool to measure mindfulness? But then I remember Casper mentioned that this is not a tool, because he was getting deeper into a person's feelings. Mind you, this is my first time to attend a mindful session. I'm a coach. So I'm looking at, as you have a group of people or a team, letting them go towards their feelings of appreciative of every moment, being mindful. This is just my mind imagining how it is. So you're in this space, you're slowing down, pausing, taking a minute to see that, okay, this is a flower, Casper said. You smell the coffee. You're no longer going to run over things without taking your time to see them, so everything that happens to you or you're coming across, you're trying to find meaning into it. So is there a way you can tell that your team, from when you started with them, they were unaware, they were unconscious in that aspect, they did not know much, or they did things just for the sake of doing them? But after mindful lessons or sessions, you're seeing how the value is coming in, how they're pausing, how things mean to them, how the purpose created. Is there a way around mindfulness sessions that you can tell that now my team has reached midway or has moved away from 0 to, so that's something, that's my question. And to add on something, Linda talked of value, that you've got to value yourself. So perhaps, is there a self-awareness again attached into mindfulness, where you encourage your people to be self-aware, to be able to move forward? Or there's a disconnection between self-awareness and, yeah, so thank you.
Thank you, Amina. Okay.
So I'll try and roll the answer, and hopefully the other two will step in. So, I think there certainly are mindfulness scales that have been developed over the last year and the, last decade or so, that one could find out more about and use. And I would also think that there are self-compassion scales and measures. So when you're looking at value and valuing oneself, I think there would be a link between self-compassion and valuing oneself. But I often think that maybe the better measurement is asking members of their families how they are experiencing them once they've kind of gone through a program. I often think that that's where the real interesting data is. Yeah, so I'd love to hear from the other two.
So there are research studies around the changes in the brain following prolonged meditation practices. And I think we know Pillay, who is known as the happiest monk in the world. And so practicing, he's a master mindfulness practitioner, but there are parts of his brain that fire up very differently from the average brain, and you can look at that at the research around that. But I think it's largely self-determined. I think people who have practiced mindfulness over time can feel the physiological shift within themselves, and they know that they somehow are different. And it doesn't make you perfect. It makes you aware. And you'll catch yourself in a reactivity, and you'll know, there I am, I'm onto myself again. So I think that it's, at the end of the day, it's an awareness practice, and it is a compassion practice. And so I'm sure, I love Linda's suggestion you have to ask those around you. You might feel it in yourself, but I think it's asking for feedback, experiencing the feedback, you know that.
Amina, that's a beautiful question that you asked, because I get asked a lot by clients and I don't know what to answer. I don't know how to answer it. And if you ask what are our success stories, I don't have the data. Can't really tell. That's when you need Simon Weitzman to be on this call, or Dr. Simon Weitzman, just in case he is here. But to kind of give us the real, maybe the science or the research. And Linda, thank you for giving some of that. It's a very, very difficult question to ask. How do we know it's worked? And it's and also because mindfulness is not a skill that comes from outside. It's not like if I want to play tennis, I'm going to learn how to play tennis. I don't have it latently. It's not in me. I need books and content and information. And the more I learn about it, maybe the better I can play. But mindfulness, it's in us already. We have it. It's not something from the outside. It's something that we should practice and develop. So it yeah, I mean, seeing that you're new in this world, please find us an answer or a tool or something that we can convince our clients. It's a very difficult question to answer for me. I don't know how to answer that.
Yeah, I'll just add that, when I started to think about my own research into what was working or was it working, I specifically chose not to use the scales, because my experience in teaching and hearing people's stories was it was so textured and multi-layered that I was worried that a scale would miss some of the depth of the changes, or even some of the challenges or the nuances of what it means to really embrace these practices as a way of life, not just as a tool or as something you're adding on for 10 minutes in your day, but really as something that you want to embrace as part of your life. It felt like a scale was going to miss that, but I'm sure there might be people on this call. In fact, I can see some names of people who have looked at research and who might have some things to add for us on this question.
Thank you so very much.
Thank you, Amina, for that question, and very thought-provoking, and I'm hoping that you've got some insight into that question, but it's quite a difficult one, as you can see. Alex is asking a question. Alex, can we invite you to bring your voice into the room? You've typed 2 questions in the chat, and we'd love to hear your voice. There you are.
Hi, Ashika. I just thought it's easier for everyone also to digest my questions by reading it instead of just me posing it. Yeah, what I still wanted to ask, especially your panel, what's your individual view of which way are we going, or which way is mindfulness going, especially in the corporate context? Do you see a broader future? Do you see something that is really establishing itself and it's getting broad? Or is there just a movement more towards like jumping on the bandwagon, and you can get bits and pieces, like you critically call it mech mindfulness, like the fast food movement? Or might there be something different that we are not even aware or realizing yet? Thank you.
Thank you, Alex. Okay, team.
Yeah, I'm unmuted, so that means I must speak first. And now, Liza, you want to go first?
mean, I think there's almost there's both of those in existence at the moment, Alex. I think you've got the let's just do a 2-day course and let's offer mindfulness, and you know, it's a bit of a rah-rah, but I think, I mean, to your point about SAP and the Chief Mindfulness Officer, when I heard that, I thought, wow, imagine being able to position such a position, but or such an opportunity. And there are waiting lists in that organization to attend the mindfulness courses. So when I look at the conferences that are organized around mindfulness, if I look at the intent around it, I think that the opportunities are endless, and it's just infusing it in all of these spaces. But it talks a lot to the culture of the organization and the culture of the leaders to embrace it as a way of being, you know, again, to be infused in all of the programs that are offered in a way of being. That is the opportunity. And I think of even the consciousness around, you know, doing good business. And so that we're not only in business for profit, but we want to do good in the world. These practices fit beautifully together. So, yeah, hopefully the scales tip more towards that. But I think, you know, the whole mindful revolution piece, there is definitely the gimmicky side of it too, and the dilution of it. So I think it's incumbent on the teachers and the practitioners to be able to bring forth the true essence of mindfulness teaching.
So I know about the time, we're almost finished. I'll try and give a quick answer. I think conversations with Simon Weitzman one stage, he helped me understand. One stage I thought, you know, mindfulness is about breathing, but mindfulness is really about being present, and the breathing helps us to be present. But it's more than just being present. It's how are we present? It's the how of the presence that makes you mindful. I mean, I can stand in the queue at the airport. That doesn't mean I'm patient. It's how I stand in the queue that makes me patient. And I think we are forced into a world of the how. There's so many changes that we can't control those changes. If we don't develop an ability to change how we engage with those changes, we're in trouble. So I think, in a way, Alex, mindfulness is coming for us. It's coming towards us the same way that December is coming towards us. For the first time in my career, December is coming this way. Normally I was trying to get to December. I get the feeling that there's something about mindfulness that's coming to us. We have to find a way to change our how in this world. And I also believe from a diet perspective, a balanced diet. And I mean, once every 3 months in McDonald's, come on, it's bloody good. If it's the right place and it's quick. So there's also, I think, place for a healthy diet for the McDonald's here or there. It's my quick answer.
Wonderful. Well, that gives us a great way of, I think, concluding our time together. I think it's been really rich, deep, and broad at the same time, and so much of complexity, answers, and more questions probably. And yet I think we all have this interest, and I think we have a place and the opportunity to make an impact in our own ways. And I do believe that corporates, like all systems created by human beings, is the opportunity to create change and to make an impact and to take ourselves and these institutions, hopefully, to a different level of awakeness and consciousness. So thank you so much, everyone, for giving up the time of your evening. A special thank you to Liza, Casper, and Linda for making this time available and really enriching our conversation. I don't think it's the last one we're going to have, but I really appreciate it. And thank you so much to Lynn and the IMISA team for bringing the marketing and for taking all of this to enrich our conversations of impact in the future. So I look forward to seeing you all at a future call, and thank you so much, everyone. Good evening, and God bless you. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.